conversation podcast. Today we have a special relating to the state of our country, but more so on the legal issues affecting our country. You heard the president was proposing constitutional amendments, and there's been some matters grappling us in the constitutional court. One of the most consistent voice about the issues of our constitution and the issues of the constitutional court itself is John Sangwa, State Counsel. Has been a luminary on this matter, a light to shed, for our people about matters happening in the Constitutional Court. Let's tackle the recent development before we tackle the state of the country. Mr. John Sangwa, welcome to the podcast. This is home for you now.
Thank you for inviting me again. I was just thinking to myself that, maybe we should work on a weekly program.
I think so. I think so. It's becoming imperative.
That's right. So I've even lost count as to the number of times I've appeared on the podcast. So I think it's something worthwhile to consider because we're never short of issues in our country, especially matters of governance. And I think it is important to constantly share thoughts and encourage debate. And I think that is what is required in a democracy. It's not just about singing it. It is also about living true to it.
Recent developments have brought worry. Zambia has been in the international media. Recently, President Hakainde Hichilema suspended 3 constitutional judges. This raised serious issues, especially that these judges were part of a panel that were supposed to hear former President Edgar Lungu's matter before court. There is a young man, a UPND youth activist, Michelo Chizombe, who's taken this matter to the Constitutional Court, challenging the eligibility of former President Edgar Lungu's decision to stand in the 2021 elections and his eligibility, and in future elections, like the 2026 elections. People saw you throw in your heart in the matter. What is your role in this case?
Well, I just went in as a friend of the court, in the sense that there is a provision in our in the Constitutional Court Act where the court can invite somebody whom they think, whom the court thinks is knowledgeable on a subject, to assist the court in the process of adjudicating on the issues that are before court. And when the court does not do that, any person that feels that it can be of value to the court in resolving the issues that the court is dealing with can apply. And I did file that application. Fortunately, I was granted permission to take part in the proceedings as a friend of the court. The implication of that is I have no interest in terms of the case. I'm not supporting, I'm not there to defend a particular person's position. So
you are not supporting either the petitioner, Michelo Chizombe, or the respondent, in this case, Edgar Lungu, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, and the Attorney General?
That's correct. So I didn't go there for that because in terms of the merit of the case, I think both parties were ably represented. The petitioner has his own lawyers, and the respondents have their own respective lawyers. So my involvement was basically to try and work with the court to assist the court and be able to see issues from another perspective, not necessarily to replicate the arguments that have been advanced by the parties to the proceedings. And people have asked me, why did I do that? The motivation is quite simple, in the sense that I'm quite privileged in the sense that I've been following the history of this country. And as a people, we appear not to desire to move on. We tend to, I think, be comfortable just repeating the same thing as a country and hoping that things will be, you have a different outcome. The reason I moved in, I applied, was because what is happening right now is exactly what transpired between 1991 and 1996.
Explain.
Okay? Now, here's the situation, and that was the motivation to try and warn the court, to say, court, we've been here before, and we are on a very dangerous path. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. What do I mean by that? In 1991, the parallels are really baffling. Okay? In 1991, President Kaunda was president of Zambia. He was presiding over the enactment or the making of the Constitution of 1991.
Yeah.
Now, what you also see is that President Edgar Lungu was presiding over the amendment of the Constitution in 2016. Now, one of the issues that arose during Kaunda's period was, until then, there was no time limit as to the number of times one can hold the office of president. Remember, Kaunda had been president from 1964. Now we are talking about 1991. So there was a proposal in the Constitution that there should be a term limit. Every president should be, can only hold office twice. Yeah. Now the assumption is that you finish 2 5-year terms. Now, that issue came up in 91. Now, how do we manage this process? Because Kaunda had held office more than that. Okay, maybe 3, maybe I think by 91, I think there had been
almost
about
5 terms.
5, yes, yeah, nearly 5. Now the question is, how were we to address that? Because Kaunda still wanted to stand in 91. So they came up with a very clever formula where they said, well, for purposes of counting the number of times the president has held office, we will start counting with this Constitution. Meaning that all the years that Kaunda served as president did not count. It came to 0.
So the new law didn't apply retrospectively.
That's right. And
Kaunda was dealt with as a fresh candidate.
As a fresh candidate, so whatever he did before that didn't count. Now, President Lungu had the same challenge after the 2015
elections.
15 and 16 election, because in 2016, they introduced the amendment to the Constitution. Now, I think the drafters didn't think so much as to how we're going to treat the number of years that President Lungu had held the office before 2016. Right? So, so now the question that arose was, because I think this was a realization after the election of 2016. Then they said, okay, we're now talking about 2016, he has won. What about 2021?
Is he eligible?
Is he eligible?
Because he has just served from 2015 to 2016.
That's right. So how do we treat that period? Right? So what then they did was, there was now this issue that was now a question was framed in the case of Dan Pule. Yeah. Okay? I was
a hypothetical question.
That's right.
Yes.
So I think this was something that people discovered later on, to say, listen, we would like this man to to stand in 2021. But he has a problem because he has already held office. He's been elected twice in 2015 and 2016. How do we manage this process? So that's how the case of Danpule arose. So it was basically a creative way to try and erase the period served before.
That's why you are saying this. The parallels are similar to 1991.
Exactly. So, through the Danpule case, President Lungu managed to erase the number of years he served before 2016.
The 18 months he served.
Yes. So, through that very creative interpretation, by the way, I was involved in the case. So, they achieved a very, they basically erased those number of years, so that the first term effectively started with the 2016, putting him in the same position as